Well, good morning to both of you. It's really, really lovely to meet both of you. I just want to introduce you first. This is Parivash and Nasser Rohani, and they are members of the Baha'i faith. So we're going to be talking about the Baha'i, would you call it a religion? Is that how I should refer to it?
Faith, religion, spiritual movement, anything that describes the purpose of the Baha'i faith, which is really unification of humanity and kindness among all.
Beautiful. Well, we're going to get into that more. I just want to let people know and that if they want to contact anybody within the Baha'i organization or find a group, that where they would go is Baha'i, BAHAI.org. Do I have that correct? Wonderful. Yeah. And that there are communities all over Maine, probably all over the world. But since we're talking local right now, there's communities all over Maine that one can find if one wants to find out more or explore. So, with that said, my first question to both of you would be, first, what drew you to this particular path, and how does it play a part in your life now? So, let's start there.
Well, Parivash and I both have been born in Baha'i faith, but, Baha'i faith, unlike, other spiritual paths that once you're born in it, you are considered as a part of it. We need to accept the faith upon the age of maturity ourselves, and we have to prescribe to it. So what we have done, we have studied in our childhood and in our youth the Baha'i faith, and upon accepting it, we have joined the Baha'i faith officially.
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention that age of maturity, of course, in the Baha'i faith, by 15, you can explore the faith and accept the faith, to be a part of the community and be obedient to the, principle of the Baha'i faith. And then by age 21, it seems there is another step that you become a part of community administratively. Because at that age, you can be elected to the administrative order of the faith. Because in Baha'i faith, we don't have priest or clergy that guide the community. So everything is done through the election. And by age 21, the person who accepts the faith can be a part of that process.
I see. So that's interesting that it's done by election. And so whoever is elected into a particular body of people then guides the community. Is that right?
So it is not really, it is a very different structure. Like even the election, because when we talk about the election, we can compare it to the outside world, the propaganda, how much money is being spent for election. In Baha'i faith, none of that exists. It's really a spiritual election, a spiritual process. So even when you elect someone, you don't elect them because they are highly educated or they are materially really high and well-to-do. It's all based on the spiritual qualities. Who is more trustworthy? Who is more truthful? Who is more there to really advance the humanity's civilization? So it is based on a different criteria. And then
I would say yes.
Yeah, and then once that entity is elected, their responsibility is to come together and consult. So the decision is never one person idea or two people. It is consensus among those people who are elected to that entity.
Yes. Yes. And it sounds like, yes, go ahead. It sounds,
I'm sure
did you
that,
want to?
through this course of interview, we'll have, much more to discuss about these administrative bodies of the Baha'i community. The Baha'i community, just like any other faith community that has issues related to managing the affairs of the community, such as marriage, death, issues of divorce, childbirth. These are all issues that there are administrative needs to manage the affairs, running of the community meetings and all that. And these are the affairs that they require a sort of leadership. But the Baha'i faith regards that individuals, if they are given that capacity, because of personalities, they have their own views and, they infiltrate personal views into the spiritual values. And that's the reason that we have so many divisions among faith communities in the world. So to curb that, the faith has designed a sort of consultative body that every place that has enough size, a good size Baha'i community, they will have an election of individuals of capacity to be as for community guides for a selected period of time, for a year, or at international level for 5 years. And during that period, these individuals individually do not have any capacity. But when they get together, they consult and discuss about affairs of the community and come to some decision, for example, to hold a meeting on such and such day, or to, for example, when someone approaches for marriage, what are the requirements of, performing the marriage, place, and, other issues, logistics, and they manage the affairs in that way. There are, I should say, tens of thousands of such local, we call them local spiritual assemblies that are all over the world. So that's, I guess, we suffice at this point, and later, if there are other,
Yes. I mean, it sounds like a very unique way to run what we could call an organization, certainly a spiritual organization. And it sounds like, from what I've read, that also is a reflection or a living embodiment of some of the values and principles
Indeed.
of the Baha'i faith. Perhaps you could talk to some of that, some of what the values and principles are.
Well, this faith is a spiritual movement that started in the middle of 19th century. And it was around the time that in the West we were going through Renaissance, industrialization in Europe, and also, some beginning of it in America. And in the East, there was, the whole Middle East was, in depth of, spiritual corruption, if you will. They did not have real guide and values to, run the affairs of their communities, in the sense that there were a lot of superstitions and fanatical views and killings and so on and so forth going on. And because of that, there was a need for revival, spiritual revival. I call it, spiritual renaissance that happened in 1844, in middle of 19th century. It started in Persia with the advent of a cause that is called the Baha'i faith. The foundation of the faith is on the principle of oneness of human race. The faith says that the purpose, the most important goal of humanity today is to achieve the principle of oneness. At every dispensation and every millennium, there was one topic that was the goal of humanity at that time. a time was that, for example, during, Buddhist movement, in 2,000 years ago, there was a need for personal, peace and salvation. That there was a time that at the time of Christ, that essential purpose of love for one another was the purpose. At the time of Jewish, creation, coming of Jewish faith into being, the principle of order and law was something that, so there were so many laws in the faith. But today, the purpose of humanity should be focused on oneness of human race. And to achieve that goal, there are some sub-principles that we must put together to achieve that goal of oneness. First and foremost is two wings of a bird, man and woman, woman and man. These two wings of bird of humanity must be equally respected, equally strong and strengthened to have the family of humanity to fly to the height of civilization. So you see that still in many communities, we do not have that. You must have heard about recent events going on in Iran in the past few days that
indeed, yes,
are rising on a movement of equality of sexes and equality of gender equality, and that is something that the Baha'i faith initiated about 200 years ago. There was another one was about science and religion that must work hand in hand. Religions, some of the religions believe that science is a different realm and therefore has nothing to do with religion. And science refuses to accept religion as a faculty of knowledge. And so these two are both, even though each are different faculties, two different areas, but they have to complement each other. They must, accept each other, and they should not reject each other's values. Otherwise, the bird of humanity's civilization will not fly. Abdul Baha, the founder of the faith, says that religion is light. Religion is knowledge. Knowledge is light. And if you oppose knowledge, it means that you accept darkness and ignorance. So if a religion opposes light of knowledge, what it is going to preach is ignorance and superstitions. And therefore, that is not acceptable. The same way, if science refuses religion and as a faculty of knowledge, it loses its spiritual and compassionate part, and it cannot really achieve the goals. And result is we are having all these weapons of mass destruction that are rampant in the world because that factor of spirituality is not into the dialogue, into conversation, and because of that we have these problems. There are many other principles, Parivash, probably you would like to share.
Yeah,
Yes.
and international language, Baha'u'llah talks about, because he has come to bring the universal unity, the global unity. He mentioned that really the unity of language, there should be an international language that beside the mother tongue would be taught in every school around the globe, because really so many of misunderstanding that's happening in our communities because we don't understand each other. If we understand each other, all of the problem probably would be diminished. And he said either that language would be selected from existing languages or it would be created. But whatever it is, it should be something that everybody in this global community accepted, because that's the only way that it can help. And then another principle is independent investigation of truth. Baha'u'llah talks about that he has come for an age of maturity, so people who are mature can independently investigate the truth for themselves interpret the writing and decide what part of this principle or how they want to put it in practice. So really, it is all about advancing the civilization and just collaborating with like-minded people. So Baha'i faith is not an isolated faith. We know that our numbers are few, but we have principles that we think maybe we can offer to the humanity. And for that reason, we are willing and welcoming whoever thinks about unity and peace and all of that. So all of us can work together to make that a reality for every human being on this planet. So there are many, many other, principles that Baha'u'llah have brought about oneness of religion, oneness of God, that there is only one God, that there is only one religion. So it is a faith, changeless faith of God. So if we look at religion in the past, we could see that we are all one in a spiritual principle. We all are believing in the same spiritual principle. The only reason there is different religion is because the time changes and the necessity and need of humanity changes. So the new religion, every new religion that has come, they have brought new social, economical, political law. And that's the reason that, we believe in progressive revelation, that we are all part of the same spiritual book, different chapter of the same book.
Yes.
So,
yes. What strikes me, many things strike me about what both of you are saying, but how prescient it was. How the founder, I can't pronounce his name, but somehow received the information about what was needed now. And if we look at the world now, how perfect is it that in this world now, as you say, that's what's needed? It's like somehow there was a knowing of even what was to come in the world.
And one thing that Baha'u'llah emphasizes is that as humanity progresses, nothing is static, and his teachings are not something that will be good forever. It has an expiration, and there would be need for change. In fact, Baha'is have a principle we call, we have to create a culture of change. And, this concept of culture of change that Baha'is offer may sound at the first, when you hear it, you think it is oxymoron, because culture is something that is ingrained in the civilization. It doesn't change. We have, ceremonies and activities that are repeated over and over and over.
Yeah.
So they are cultural, icons, things that will never change. And Baha'i faith suggests that humanity has to create a culture that should be adaptive to change. As we grow, as physically, materially, spiritually we grow, we need to change, just like a kid, a little child. When a child is born, the clothing that we put on the child is small and beautiful. But as child grows, those clothes, even though they are perfect, still perfect, but they are not good enough for that child. The child outgrows them. And the same is with these spiritual teachings that, even the Baha'i faith offers. Same like previous teachings from, antiquated faiths, that they were all beautiful, they were all the most relevant at their own time. But as time passes, we need, some massaging onto the situation and having new teachings.
And how do these new teachings come about? Do they come about through individuals? Do they come about through messengers that come? How do these teachings, how does the change come about?
Well, the Baha'i faith suggests that as we look at the history, it seems that every millennium, every about 600 to 1,000 years, once a person of divine connection will appear with a message. And his task is to give this offering of insight to humanity as a gift. And it is up to humanity to accept or reject those gifts of knowledge. And the Baha'i faith says that today the gift of this spiritual offering of faith is given the same way that I shared with you. And perhaps in another 1,000 years, we might have another such revelations that will continue. It is a never-ending connection with the world of divine.
Yes, yes. So it both comes through the messengers, but also through individual human action and their own decisions, it sounds like.
For day-to-day affairs, definitely, yes. And we need to adapt our religious understanding to the circumstances of the day and make sure that, they match the relevance of time and situation. Definitely.
Yes. Yeah. One of the things that when I was reading about the Baha'i faith that really struck me was that its purpose, in a sense, is to transform the character of humanity.
Yes.
And I wonder if you could speak to that. Like, what does that actually mean to transform what does that mean to transform the character of humanity?
I think the purpose of all the religion have been transformation. But how they have done that transformation is different. In Baha'i faith, Baha'u'llah talks in many occasions that this is the time that humanity is tired of words alone. We need to put in practice what we believe in. Even when it comes to the prayer, Baha'u'llah talks about that your service done in your work done in the spirit of service is prayer. So, many topic of the previous time have a new meaning. So really with his revelation, he have given a new understanding, new meaning to words that we have been using in the past, like about power. When we talk about power, it's somebody who has a lot of money or knowledge and he's leading a community or something. But really, Baha'u'llah talks about power means that we are empowering others. When we empower others, then we can say that we have influence. So many things have a different kind of refreshing kind of outlook.
Yes.
And transformation happens when we are doing those things, when we are serving humanity, when we are constantly thinking our action is not creating disunity. Our talk is bringing people together. When we are really ultimately thinking about the global community, about how we are interdependent and how we are connected to everybody else. So transformation happens when those things are always something that are priority. Unity in every action that we do. Is that really achieving unity? Is that really bringing comfort to someone else? Because, prayers are important, but if you're not really following a prayer with action, then it's just words, empty words that is not changing or transforming anyone or anything. So I feel personally that transformation means we are advancing the civilization to a better place that includes everyone, and it doesn't leave anyone behind.
In other words, transformation refers that we don't keep our principles and teachings just in the realm of theory, bring it to realm of action. And
Yep.
when our faith is not just, Sunday to Sunday going to a religious service and coming home and feeling that, oh, I am now spiritual, but rather it should be a part of my daily life. And I try to exemplify all those teachings that I have learned in theory, put them into action. Then that will transform me, and by my transformation, hopefully my community changes. It begins, of course, from at home. When I internalize the concept of oneness, equality of man and woman, this concept, it has, just want to mind you that this teaching of equality of women and men came about 200 years ago in a country that even today, if you look at it, they do not have respect for women. And
No.
if I exemplify that in my day-to-day life, and I want to tell you that it is a process that we need to work at it. Even within the Baha'i community, we have to work at it and try to implement that. And that takes time and all that. And when I try to achieve that goal and make that change in my life, and my wife does the same, and we work together and we consult together in running of our affairs, it is one thing that it
Yes.
transforms our family. And when our family is transformed, it translates into our children's families. They will also grow, and then our community changes. So this transformation is really not just believing in something in our heart, but bringing out of heart and into realm of action.
Yes. Yes. So transforming the community is the means to transform the individual, and the other way around as well. So if somebody in the community was having trouble, let's say their marriage was difficult and they were having trouble with each other, what would be the advice to them, or how would they receive support or help? Would that be within the community? Would that be, just speak to that if you would.
So usually the local spiritual assembly that Nasser was talking about would be the first point of entry, per se, that they come to the assembly and they mention about that they want to get appointment, they have marital problem. So then assembly, invite them to their, assembly and listen to them, and depending to what is their problem, so the action would be very different.
Yes,
if it is too legal, because we are not a legal entity, we usually advise them to proceed in a legal way, because we don't have any legal authority. But if it is problem that assembly thinks, okay, by consultation, by meeting them more often, by listening to them, by bringing another individual who probably have gone through the same thing, or they can advise them, all of those things would happen through this process of hardship that the couple are going through. And if the marriage is not cannot be saved, then the divorce would be issued. So usually when they come after all the exploration and consultation, they don't come to the point that they can reunite. They usually put a date, for example, April 10th. And then from that moment, till about a year, they try individually to resolve the problem, but they don't live together.
That's very important. Even in the science also they say that, they need a time out. The couple need a time out, and they should not live under the same roof, because if they do that, then they perpetuate the differences and problems. Let them separate from each other for up to a year. And if they cannot resolve their problems within a year, then they come back to the assembly, and then the divorce will be finalized.
Yeah. And this year that they are separated is really not, it is for them to work on the problem of their marriage. It is not to give them permission to go and, date or see, some other people. It is just for them, that purpose that they work on their marriage. And if after 1 year of trying to do that, they cannot reconcile, then assembly would issue. Yeah, and they, of course, they have to do their civil, divorce, all of those things have to happen. But religiously, within a year, the assembly would issue that they are separated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. So do people meet on a regular basis, like other, I don't know what we would call it, either assemblies or places where people meet and do practices together? Or, like what brings the community together?
Yes, Baha'is, they have regular meetings of, going to church, but the meetings that are on regular basis are called feasts. We call every 19 days we get together in a meeting we call 19-day feast, and the purpose of this meeting is threefold. Number one is to get together and have devotions together, pray together, read the writings of the founder of the faith together, and after that we will have some administrative consultation. The Baha'i faith is founded on principle of democracy, if you will. And, every member of the community should have a say in the affairs of the community. Even those who are not elected to that spiritual assembly, during these feasts, they can make suggestions for the affairs of the community, and that goes to the local spiritual assembly for consultation. So the administrative part of the feast is to consult about the affairs of the community, what services we can do in general community, and what are the news of the affairs, and so on and so forth. Then the third part, which I like the most, is the socializing. Friends will get together every 19 days and they share, what has happened in the past 19 days and socialize and make plans of visiting each other and so on and so forth. And generally, at that time, we have refreshments served and, food served. But sometimes, of course, depending on the situation. For example, in the past 3 years, we have had our meetings on Zoom. So socializing would have been only consulted. Just now we are talking with each other that way. But it is not necessary that we really have too much of emphasis on physical food, but rather meeting and consulting and discussing and socializing.
I got it.
Also, we have holy days, in Baha'i community, like birth of our prophet, his declaration. We usually have meeting around that, but many times the grassroots, organically people come together and say, oh, we want to have a prayer meeting, or we want to have another deepening on some of the topic in the faith. So those meetings are something that the individual can come together and make decision. But the feast and Baha'i holy days are very specific dates. So, but the other activities, coming together, studying some messages or writing or deepening on some topic, it is all really many times it just organically happens.
I see. So it's not like there's some preacher or giving a lecture or something like that. People would get together organically, kind of grassroots, to study. or to
Definitely, you will not see any preacher in any of the Baha'i gatherings, and you will not see, especially people of frock. Nobody with the special collar, shirt, or the dress that is signifying to be a person of
Right.
spiritual status. You will not see those kind of individuals in the Baha'i gatherings. You
Yeah.
know, when we have, for example, a feast at home, the family that hosts is generally running the affairs of the feast, or a chairperson of the spiritual assembly that is for that community runs the affairs, or sometimes a kid, a young a teenager will run the affairs of the feast. Really, it does not have any order that who should run the affairs. We do not have clergy, and it is a 200-year-old faith, and it has run perfectly in the past 200 years, and it has proved that it can be run.
And
It can be run.
it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Are there, when you say people study together, are there specific texts or books, or what would they study, and what would be the nature of the prayer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, we have these study groups that are based on a system of, they call it Ruhi books. And there are different topics. Like, for example, the first book is about prayer and life after death. So many people, it's international system of education that globally is done, and it is not only Baha'is who participate in it. So they usually, people who are interested to know more about how to connect to God or that higher being, so they take that Ruhi book 1, which is about all prayer and meditation, and then of course life after death. So in many areas, people come together and study that book. The text is there, and there are some moderators, somebody who have already done this book with another group. Usually 2 people come together and facilitate the discussion. Not that they run the discussion, but they facilitate, like they come together, they study, and they discuss about it, and there are sometimes action-oriented guidance that they could go and study a prayer with someone else, or if somebody wants them to come and say prayer. So, it runs differently, but it's a global system. And because the texts are there and they are chapter by chapter, it makes it easier for anyone to take that book and start, with few people who are interested on that topic.
Interesting. And what is the name of the book again? Can you just say it?
It is called Ruhi, R-U-H-I, Ruhi books.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Very interesting. So very grassroots. People really self-organize.
Indeed.
Indeed, yeah.
Yeah, really lovely. Really lovely. I'm just curious.
Maybe it is because, when Baha'u'llah talks about that he has come for a mature human beings also should be spiritually independent. Mean they have to think independently about their connection with God and the interpretation of the writing that they read. They don't need somebody else to interpret and tell them what you have to understand from there. So the beauty of these classes are that sometimes, we are in a group of people sitting together, and somebody who is not a Baha'i would say such profound understanding of the writing that everybody else is learning. So it means that this connection to a spiritual principle, you don't have to be expert, or you don't have to be a Baha'i to understand it, because it is very, general kind of value. So everybody could connect with that. You don't need to have been taken a class in university to understand it, because it is your connection with that source of spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel that as mature human being, it is a good practice to be also independent and independently investigating those kind of truth and understanding.
It is important to emphasize this issue of independent search after truth, even though Parivash several times said that. But independent search after truth, which is foundation of the beginning of all these Baha'i what we call journey, is I do not follow whatever I have heard from my forefathers that that's truth and you have to stick to it. I have to really experience it myself. I have to accept it myself. And once I do that, then it is something that I have come to, realization. And understand, Baha'u'llah says that understanding truth does not require really the material knowledge. There are people who go to theological schools of jurisprudence for years and years, and they come with the concepts that are really so abhorrent about concept of racial superiority or gender inequality. Women are not, equal with men. There are, right now, those ayatollahs or those religious figures that believe that women are inferior to men. They are all educated people. They are not really uneducated. But spiritual Baha'u'llah says that spiritual values require purity of heart and sense of justice and fairness. And if a person has purity of heart and sense of justice and fairness, will understand what is right from wrong. And that is the thing that when I want to contemplate on spiritual things, I do not need to rely on knowledge of another person, but rather when we sit together and we consult, we do not impose our personal views on others, but we share our views. And another person can say, oh, this idea that you mentioned is very, meaningful and acceptable. I will adapt that. Or, no, I believe this is another way of looking at things, because there are so many angles to one fact. A fact, a truth has several angles, and so you can see from various angles. So these are the things that are important when we talk about independent search after truth.
Yes.
Also, Baha'u'llah say that truth is not absolute. So that's also another way to look at that. If somebody think, oh, I know the truth, I am the only one who knows it. But when it is not absolute, then there might be weak point.
So personal inquiry is really, really not just accepted, but very deeply valued.
Yes.
And at the same time, it sounds like there's I can't quite call it a belief, but maybe some sort of recognition that as people mature, part of that maturity, I guess we could call it, of the soul, brings people naturally to these principles of love and unity and justice. That is the maturity of the soul that would begin to naturally manifest.
Yeah.
And how it does.
So well, yes, exactly.
Yeah. And how it manifests in life, and there might be some differences in terms of how people feel or experience that. But that there is a kind of evolution, let's say, to the soul that happens.
No individual imposes his or her values on others. My understanding is my understanding, and Parivash's understanding is hers. And I cannot impose my understanding upon her because I am limited to me.
Right. So great tolerance, not just tolerance, but invitation to that kind of personal inquiry. Yes. And I'm just curious, when you say what happens after death, that's part of the book. I'm curious what the view is on that.
Yeah.
Is there?
So, the view is that, the life in general is a journey. So death is not end of life. So the life continues forever and ever. And in Baha'i faith, we don't believe in regression of the soul. So we believe that, soul progresses in the other world. And actually there is an example that Baha'u'llah brings in one of his writings, and he says, if you look at the fetus in the womb of the mother, that fetus is growing finger and leg and eyes and ears, and really doesn't understand why. Because that fetus doesn't need the hand and leg in the womb of the mother. So they are really ignorant of why they are developing all of these limbs. But when they are born to this world, they understand, without all of those limbs, they could not survive here. They couldn't see, they couldn't walk, they couldn't do anything. And Baha'u'llah talks about that as humanity, as human beings, we are here for a better journey, a spiritual journey, and for that journey we need a spiritual limbs. And a spiritual limbs are like we be a better person, be truthful, be honest.
All human virtues.
All human virtues.
All the virtues, yes.
Really limbs that prepare us for our journey beyond, which is not physical, and it is all spiritual. And really, it is I think in many, religion, many people believe in life after death.
Yes.
So it is not only the Baha'i faith that believes in that, but the concept and the examples that Baha'u'llah brings in his writing, I think, like for me personally, I understand that concept in a different light. That, this is a journey and I have to get ready for that journey. Not to be afraid that, I do this and I go to hell or heaven. I'm doing it for just the purpose of the action. I'm truthful because I have to be truthful. Or I'm honest because I need to be honest.
Not for an ulterior motive.
Yes.
And Parivash pointed, touched base on a very important topic of life after death is a spiritual journey, not a physical one. As humanity in the past could not comprehend the concept, maybe in some of the spiritual texts we have in the previous faiths, the concept of hell and heaven. And it was so fearsome that if you have done something bad, you'll be burned in the fire of hell, and there'll be all calamitous world and all that. And, Baha'u'llah says that nearness to God is your heaven, and your distance from God is the hell that we put ourselves. It is just like when, as a child, our father and mother, they are happy with us. If my mother is pleased with me, that is my heaven. I am so happy. It's the greatest reward to me, more physical reward than this spiritual reward is even more effective than physical reward. And when my parents frown at me and they are displeased with me, that is my hell. So this belief brings some assurance and, solace to the heart that God is really pure love. Is not a punishing, power on the top there, that if I have done something bad, He is going to chastise me and put me in fire of hell forever. So that assurance brings such a calmness in the heart of believers.
Yes, that there's love and mercy in
God is love. God is mercy.
God is love.
Isn't it the essence of every faith?
Yes. And so the spiritual journey, not the incarnate journey, continues in whatever way after death.
Yes.
That the soul continues to evolve and develop and so forth.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
And I think the concept that in the other world, there is no regression for the soul. Also very hopeful that, you think, oh, okay, I'm even in that realm, I'm progressing. And, Paolo talked about so many of those things happen, by people who are, like, for example, if somebody dies and the family say prayer or do service or do charity work in the name of the disease, that also helps with the progression of their soul. So it's not that it ends here, so our good deed for others also is helpful.
I see. And so that furthers the evolution of the soul even after death, what we do here.
Yes.
Yeah, I would like to give an example about this topic. Just imagine that a kid dies of some illness prematurely in youth, and the parents start an act of charity, the awareness or something in the community in the name of their deceased child. I'm just giving an example. They can do it for anybody. And this act of service that translates into, a lot of good deeds for the community, something for betterment of the community, will be a cause of joy and happiness of that deceased child who otherwise had a chance to, if would not die prematurely, would have a chance to, excel herself or himself in this world. So parents will assist that child to grow. And the same way, if I, as a father, pass away, my children do similar act of service in my name, I will be so pleased and happy that I will promote and grow in the next world. So these are the type of, acts of service that Parivash is referring to.
How beautiful. How beautiful. Yes. And maybe as we're drawing close to the completion, you could say something about the Baha'i in the world today. Seems like I know it's an international community, I guess we could call it, and that there are organizations and communities all over the world, or in many parts of the world.
Yeah, there are, I should say about 10, 12,000, local centers all around the world. Encyclopedia Britannica describes the Baha'i faith as second most widely spread faith community in the world after Christianity. It doesn't mean that numerically we are large, but as far as, diversity of representation is really represented in every country, every region in the world. And Baha'is are very much involved in social services activities, non-political. Baha'is do not involved in partisan politics, but rather involve themselves in social and economic and environmental services in the community. If there are organizations that are for example, for environment in any place, those Baha'is that can join those and serve along with them. Baha'is do not believe that they have all the solutions, and we emphasize that we do not have.
Right.
We do not have. We are a part of the whole. But whatever we have, in a tray of humility, we offer it to humanity. And if it is accepted, of course it is accepted. So it is the area that we channel our energies and abilities in serving our surroundings.
That's very beautiful. Very beautiful. I feel deeply enriched by our conversation today. I really must say I'm very touched and moved by all you've shared, in both individually and in the name of this very beautiful what can we call it? I don't even know what to call it. Faith,
Faith,
practice,
Baha'i faith.
assembly, Baha'i faith. I feel very, very enriched. So I want to thank you both so very much.
And
And
we have to give our gratitude to you for
Thank you
giving
so
us this
much.
opportunity to join with you and share with you our belief system.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for everything.
thank you. So I'm going to end the recording and just hold on.
Yeah.